This play, The Birth, began, funny enough, on a beach about 3.5 years ago. I was reading Frederick Buechner's book. He's an author, a minister, essayist, poet. He wrote a book called The Magnificent Defeat. And in this book, there's a chapter called The Birth. And this chapter is 3 essays. And as an actor, when I read them, they're actually monologues. So when I hit this chapter, I thought, wow, I want to perform this. So this was in a summer. And, as an actor, it's hard to find material you believe in. What I discovered with this project is I can create my own material. And that's what has happened, is The Birth, it started as these 3 essays, but due to their length, you can't really, charge a paying audience for 20 minutes worth of material. So I developed this show, which I called The Birth, after the chapter in the book, to be able to perform for people. We've developed a production around it that involves music, live music on stage, involves dance. It's funny when I talk to people about this show that to say, oh, well, there's dance and there's music and there's acting. It just sounds so trite, and it's hard to overcome people's expectations of what a Christmas production is. It's hard to overcome people's expectations because for so long we've been, especially if you grow up in church or have been around church settings much, you've seen these Christmas productions that, well-intentioned, are ultimately kind of flat and superficial and don't have a whole lot of depth to them. The beauty of this production is its ability to take these pieces, these parts, which are a dance here, live music here, dramatic interpretation here, and pull them all together into a cohesive whole that really becomes more than these pieces. And that's sort of the beauty of The Birth. We've really lucked out here in Charlotte. I've only lived here about 2 years, but early in that time, discovered a theater called CAST. It's Carolina Actors Studio Theater. And they've got 2 spaces, and it's a great little theater, period. They major in what they call experiential theater. So a lot of their productions are very, you hit the door and you're already engrossed in the milieu of the production that they're performing. And so they've got a space, they call it the Boxagon, which is really just this tiny in-the-round space. As a matter of fact, it's only about 50 seats. It almost becomes a character in the show itself. Truthfully, having mentioned things like dance and live music and dramatic interpretations, in a big scale, in a bigger stage, a normal stage, you'd probably lose a lot. It would come off as talent showy. But because you've got this tiny 50-seat space, very intimate, probably uncomfortably intimate for some people, you've got this very small space, it creates some magic there. And for me personally, in the Christmas season, it creates that magic. Another beautiful thing about this show is its simplicity. It's very minimalist. The performers are all sort of uniformly in black top and jeans kind of thing. There's not much in the way of production value, mainly because we're an independent production and don't have any money. It's sort of like, desperation breeds creativity. The Birth is different from probably almost, I know from any Christmas production I've seen, and that's, maybe I'm haughty and, well, it's my little baby and I've developed it and, think there's nothing quite like it out there. But I also think there's nothing quite like it out there. Having been in a church production before that is more traditional, has your Mary, Joseph story, a very narrative. That's one prime example. The Birth, there's no real narrative structure to it. Because it's loosely based around these 3 essays that are performed, there's no story. The story is the behind-the-scenes story, and that is the birth of Jesus. And so the goal of the birth, the production, is to engross the audience into that through nothing more than words and invoking a sort of atmosphere, because we don't have sets. You know, we've got a few set pieces that get moved around during the show to invoke a sort of first century Middle East kind of atmosphere. You know, it's like, what would it have been like on that actual night? And so these three pieces are three characters in that story. These three characters are real. You know, they are, the first one is the innkeeper, and I don't want to talk too much about them so that people will come see the show, but people really resonate with this particular character, almost more so than some of the others, because it's not, oh, Jesus was born and he was born out in my, you know, stable and all is right with the world. No, this character is very hurt and broken, and he realizes, you know, it's sort of like if I were to come to you years after a big event that happened in your life and ask you about it. That's sort of the approach of the innkeeper character is. He's talking about, he's remembering this night that these people showed up at his inn, and he, in the years, you know, after, or maybe in the months after, you know, we don't really have a timetable, he's realized what happened, what he turned away, and it becomes a bigger issue for him, and he's this broken man who has never really reconciled himself to that. And that's the beauty of this show. You know, on a broader scale, is these characters are not cookie cutter. They're not, you know, superficial. They're very fleshed out characters, hopefully in performance, definitely in the writing. And they're dealing with what they've seen and or not seen, maybe in his case. I'd say The Birth is a thematic one act. It's only about 50 minutes. And there's no narrative structure, but it's tied together by these ideas that I've been talking about. And there's something about it. It's nothing I attribute to myself. I've surrounded myself with incredible performers, musicians, actors, dancers, who pull together because they realize how good this material is, and they want people to see it and get excited about it and enthusiastic about it because they are enthusiastic about it. I guess at the end of the day, all I can really say is be one of those 50 seats in December. You know, we're doing 8 shows this year, 2, 4, 6, 8. We're doing 8 shows this year, and it's going to be magical. And I don't say that in a silly, trite way, but in a way that if you're interested in what Christmas is really about, as cliche as that sounds, this reflects just a smidgen of answering that question.